Are you kidding? I don't care who your dad is. I care who you are.
There's a new high warlock in town and dating life gets complicated. Let's break down season 3, episode 2 of Shadowhunters right here on What Happened. What's going on, y'all? Lisa here, and thanks again for checking out this week's recap. First, huge shout out to all you book fans that flooded the comments on last week's recap when I asked about Simon's mark on his forehead that he got from the Sealy Queen. You said it was the mark of Cain, and we actually get to see it in action in this week's episode, which is actually pretty cool. Also, I thought this was a fun episode because it had some elements from one of my guilty pleasure genres, a rom-com, which gave it some lightheartedness because usually I feel like things get kind of intense on Shadowhunters. Now, let's just break down the episode. We'll start with Izzy. She's basically overworking herself, volunteering to take on extra work, and seems like Luke may be a little bit worried about her. He tells her she really needs to take some time to live her life and take care of herself, and then he brings up the guilt he felt for joining the circle and how he thought he could make it right by becoming a cop, but that ended up taking up all his time, and therefore he didn't have time to spend with Jocelyn and all of that. Well, Izzy ends up saying that she doesn't have a Jocelyn in her life, so it doesn't matter, but he points out that maybe it's just because she's not looking. And again, how she should make time for herself. And I just love this scene because I love that Luke is a father figure to Clary, but here he is kind of taking that fatherly role on with Izzy, and also just kind of a friend role, because I feel like we don't really get to see these two characters interact a lot together, especially not in a way like this. And I'm just guessing that Izzy's gonna take some time for herself to maybe look up that doctor from the hospital. When it comes to the rom-com-ish portion of this episode, that's thanks to Clary, Jace, Maya, and Simon. Jace decides it's finally time to take Clary on a real date, and she agrees. The only problem is Jace is not too good at planning dates, and especially for someone that he cares about. So he seeks dating advice from both Izzy and eventually Simon, who gives him some restaurant ideas. And I just love the whole Simon-Jace interaction and relationship, and I'm glad we're getting to see that again. Simon and Maya are going strong too, and Simon told Maya about what the Sealy Queen did to him, but they can't quite figure out what it is exactly since the brand or mark is invisible at the moment. While they're very happy with their relationship, someone who isn't is that douchebag Russell, who I still have no idea why Luke let this guy back into the pack. Russell confronts Maya about Simon not only moving in, but now her dating him, and Maya ends up standing up to him once again, and I just gotta love Maya for being such a strong woman and not taking any of Russell's crap. Jace ends up taking Simon's restaurant advice, and he and Clary show up at this nice restaurant, but unfortunately they didn't make a reservation, so the only place that's available to sit is at the communal table, and what do you know, Maya and Simon are there as well. Yep, this date just got more awkward, and it only continues to get more awkward as the night goes on. Jace tries to order an appetizer for Clary, but doesn't realize all the food she hates, so Simon actually has to help him out a little and whisper in his ear. Now, after some cocktails, it seems like the mood is lightened and everyone's getting along. Clary asks, one of the most asked about questions of werewolves, and say even the Hulk, what happens to the clothes when they transform? Maya answers saying how she's had some of her cutest outfits destroyed and how she has to, hide clothes all over town, and it's a nice, fun, joking moment. But then Maya goes into talking about, whether she'd rather be a werewolf or a shadow hunter, and tattoos are mentioned, and Jace ends up bringing up Maya's butterfly tattoo, which of course instantly turns the mood back to awkward because Simon's like, wait a second, Maya does have a tattoo and it's pretty well hidden. Hey Jace, how would you know where that tattoo is? Yeah, that Jace-Maya hookup has come back to haunt them. Thankfully though, both couples don't really dwell on this hookup, which I love. It doesn't seem to be something, at least for right now, that they're hung up on. It seems to actually strengthen Maya and Simon's relationship in a way as they choose to not dwell on who each other have been with in the past, but focus on who they're with now. Now for Clary, she's kind of upset, but it's not about Maya. It's more about how she's the only girl Jace doesn't want to seem to have sex with. We then hit the real rom-com territory as he starts to explain how he's never felt this way about anyone before. She's special, and he even knows all the little things about her. You get that in rom-coms where they're like, the way your nose crinkles and the way you fiddle with your hair, stuff like that. And you know what? It's basically he doesn't want to move too quickly and ruin things between them because he really feels something he's never felt before. And this is actually kind of sweet, and I admire Jace for taking that approach and actually opening up about it to Clary because it shows a different side of him. Although, we do know that while it may be part of the reason he doesn't want to get intimate with her, the other is definitely because he's scared that his nightmares that he's been having where he hurts her, all those visions, may come true, and we end up seeing him have another one of those visions at the end of the episode. Either way though, nice to see a more vulnerable side to Jace. Back to Simon, he's in his boathouse, whatever you want to call it, strumming his guitar when there's a knock on the door. He goes outside and is all of a sudden surrounded by Russell and his pals, and they tell Simon that he needs to leave and it's going to be on his own accord so Luke doesn't know and they won't get in trouble. Well, Simon's not going anywhere, and when one guy tries to carry out the or else with a baseball bat, Simon's mark lights up and catapults that dude into a van as everyone stands, including Maya, looking shocked. Yep, it looks like that Sealy Queen really wants to make sure her precious Simon is protected at all costs. But why exactly? Now on to Magnus, Alec, and Lilith. There's a new high warlock in town named Lorenzo Ray, and he's throwing a party which Magnus brings Alec to. Let's just say Lorenzo isn't too fond of Magnus, and it seems like he's not going to be lenient of sorts with the Shadowhunters either, and he's not going to be their pal and help them portal around and do all these things Magnus did because, well, Magnus was actually their friend. One of my favorite moments is seeing Alec play with little Madsy, because just when you thought Alec couldn't get any hotter, you realize just how great of a father he will be someday, and I feel like everybody just starts to melt like putty, including Magnus and his friends. Now that sweet moment is unfortunately interrupted when all of the Warlock's magic starts to go haywire and they can't control it, but thankfully Magnus is somehow able to stop it. However, whatever happened to the party, Lorenzo is very quick to blame Magnus for all of it because he found that the ley lines under his place were corrupted, and he thinks there's only one person, or rather demon, that could be capable of this, and that is Asmodeus. Now Lorenzo is set on Magnus being a part of whatever's going on, and he plans to prove it. Well, we learned that the reason Lorenzo is so quick to accuse Magnus is because the greater demon Asmodeus is in fact Magnus's father, and he's kind of ashamed of that fact. Alec then decides that they need to find a way to stop whatever's going on, and to do that, they need to inspect the ley lines of Lorenzo's place. So while Alec distracts Lorenzo asking for a tour of the house, Alec unlocks a window and Magnus sneaks in, and thankfully is able to complete whatever he needs to do for those, looking at the ley lines before Lorenzo comes back, and it was really a close call. Now there's some good news and bad news to what Magnus discovers. The good news is that he discovers Asmodeus is not responsible for this corruption. On the bad hand though, it's a demon even more powerful and basically as powerful as they come, and he's never seen anything like this. And now we know as an audience that it's evil Lilith who is gathering more of her disciples at her church, and she continues to drain their blood into the symbol on the altar. Now the corruption of the ley lines continues as it affects the hospital where Katarina tries to use her magic on a patient, and now Alec has to come up with a plan to stop all these corruptions of ley lines. He says they need to use the angelic core to fix things and stop this corruption. If they can flood the ley lines with the angelic energy, things will be fixed, but in order to do so, they're going to have to put ley lines under the Institute, which they have avoided because they don't want the Institute to be in harm, because if the plan goes wrong, well, shroop, the Institute gets basically like vaporized or something. Well, not everyone is on board with Alec's plan, mainly Degrassi's Shadowhunter, Raj, and his minions. As Alec and Magnus are trying to carry out the plan, Raj tries to mess things up by locking them out of the system, but thankfully Alex, in the nick of time, is able to fix things, the angelic core works, and this comes as a very big surprise to Lilith and her disciples as their party ends up getting cut short. The ley lines seem to be all fixed, but Lilith says that what has happened is just a minor setback, and thankfully the altar is safe. But it's still a good thing that the blood didn't quite reach the center of that altar symbol. Everything is back to good again, and Raj and his helpers have now been banished. Magnus and Alec end it by celebrating with a kiss and a drink, and Alec reassures Magnus he doesn't care about who his dad is, but who Magnus is. And I just kind of really love the development of this couple. I love they have these sweet moments, but now Alec is actually lightened up a bit, and we see there's some playful banter in there as well. Of course, when they're joking about who actually pulled off the save, and Alec's like, oh, it was all me with maybe a tiny bit of help. It's just some nice fun dynamic between these two. And well, that pretty much sums up the big events of this episode. As far as favorite moments go, I do got to give a shout out though to Alec, the shampoo sniffer, because he really was loving that shampoo. Like, I don't think he really took that bottle away from his face in that whole scene. So yeah, maybe they should start selling that shampoo maybe if it smells that good, because that's what I'm like when I smell fresh baked cookies. Now though, let's take a look at the promo for the next episode.
See, Al could be anyone.
Remember, he might not look like Sebastian Verlac. Keep an eye out for anything suspicious.
All right, let's split up.
Awfully confident, aren't you? Coming after me all alone.
Alright y'all, it's that time again. Just hit me up in the comments and let me know all your thoughts on this episode. Do you have a favorite moment, least favorite moment? How do you think Magnus will deal with Lorenzo in the future? How will Lilith end up getting her plan back on track, and will Izzy find herself a new love? Let me know, then you can click right over here to see my interview with Olivia Holt and Aubrey Joseph from Cloak and Dagger, or my interview with In Real Life from the Kids' Choice Awards. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you like what you see. My name's Lisa. I'll see you again soon.